Hey, it's Jules on Radio Now 100.9. I'm back with Emily Metheny. She hosts our Indie Connection show. You can hear it every Sunday morning, 6 a.m., right here on Radio Now 100.9. And today we're taking a moment to stop the music, start a conversation on mental health and suicide prevention. Today is World Suicide Prevention Day, September, National Suicide Prevention Month. And we're also being joined by Paulsen, who is the CEO of Indiana Youth Group. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on to talk about this important topic.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us. Can you please explain to us a little bit more about the Indiana Youth Group and who you serve?
Sure. Indiana Youth Group is actually the longest-serving LGBTQ youth group in the country. We've been here in Indianapolis since 1987. We serve LGBTQ youth ages 12 to 20 and their straight ally friends. We do work around mental health, homelessness, and then just having fun and giving the youth a safer space to be themselves.
I love that. I read that the LGBTQ individuals are more than twice as likely than heterosexual men and women to have mental health disorders in their lifetime. Can you expand on some statistics on that?
Definitely. Unfortunately, in 2020, the Trevor Project did a great survey of about 40,000 youth, LGBTQ youth. And unfortunately, they found that about 40% of those respondents had seriously considered attempting suicide in the past year. And more than half of the transgender or non-binary youth had seriously considered suicide. So it's definitely an issue that we need to tackle as a community and as a society.
Wow, those statistics are alarming. You mentioned the Trevor Project. Can you explain to us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, the Trevor Project is a nonprofit organization that's nationwide that helps LGBTQ youth that are thinking about suicide or facing mental health issues. Youth can reach out to them via internet, via text, via phone. They have a number of different ways and different programs that can help youth in different ways.
And all that contact information is on your resource page on your website, correct?
Yes, it is. You can find that at indianayouthgroup.org.
And we'll also have that linked at radionowindy.com. Just click on the News and Features tab, then click on the Mental Health Information and Resources tab. So in my research, I also read that those who are in the LGBTQ community spend more days feeling a little anxious and depressed, and then here we are in the middle of a pandemic. Is that causing more mental health concerns?
It definitely is. This survey was completed before COVID-19 hit, but even during that time, 68% of youth reported feeling symptoms of a generalized anxiety disorder. So you can imagine what it is now in the middle of a pandemic when these youth might be stuck in a house that is unwelcoming or doesn't recognize their true selves. Without support of teachers and mentors and peers, it is definitely a tough time right now for everyone, but specifically for LGBTQ plus youth.
And, I think that that's something we're not really thinking about right now. There is all this e-learning going on, and sometimes school is that escape for kids, especially if their home life is not great.
It is, and studies have shown that especially transgender, non-binary youth who have their true selves respected by adults, that will cut their suicide attempts in half. So when we take away those adults that recognize those youth's true selves, we are really putting youth at risk. So IYG is here to provide an outlet for those youth to still find trusting and supportive mentors. We have moved all of our programming online. We have virtual IYG. We're running 19 different programs a month that youth can access for free. And so we are trying to offer the support that they've probably lost not being able to be in person in school.
And if someone has a family member who is LGBTQ plus community, how can they show their support and help their family member?
I think just listen to them, believe who they say they are. Studies have shown that LGBTQ youth know who they are. And when they speak that out loud, it takes a lot. It's very fearful for them to do that. And it really takes them stepping out on a limb to say who they are. And if they're not believed, it's just another trauma against them. So when someone says who they are, it's really important that we believe them and try to learn alongside them.
Every family dynamic is different. Every situation is different. Sometimes it's way easier for us to talk to our friends or a complete stranger than it is to talk to our own family. So how do we start that conversation about mental health and suicide prevention with our family?
I think just being upfront and honest and asking the question, are you having suicidal thoughts? If you think that someone is and they have not mentioned it, it's up to us to reach out and ask the question and not shy away from it. People tend to think, well, if I ask the question, it'll drive them there. No, if you ask the question, they might actually answer truthfully, and we can get them help before they do try that suicide attempt.
And kind of continuing on starting that conversation, what can you do if you've noticed a family member or your child is harming themselves? How do you go about starting that conversation?
I think just the same way. Honesty's the best way to tackle it. Just being upfront and saying, what can I do to support you, and what kind of supports do you think you need, and then helping them find those supports, whether that's within the family or outside the family. 46% of LGBTQ youth report that they wanted psychological or emotional counseling from a mental health professional, but they could not get that, either due to family not wanting to support them or the support not being available. So as a community, we need to make sure that supports are available for everyone, including youth.
So I know the way we talk about mental health and suicide prevention with a 12-year-old is going to be way different than the way we talk about it with a 20-year-old. How do we navigate that age difference?
Well, every conversation you have with a 12-year-old is different than a 20-year-old. And right. I think as an adult, we just know, we have to bring it down to their level. But I think, again, not beating around the bush, just being honest and having conversations with them. The youth want support. And if an adult is brave enough to reach out and say the thing that might be hidden in the room, that takes a lot of pressure off the youth. It's a lot easier for a youth to say, yes, I am feeling that, rather than them having to bring it up.
And for any teachers or other community members who work with youth, how can they help connect those youth to your services?
We have case managers available 24/7. They can go to our website and find those contacts, or they can go to indianayouthgroup.org. We provide services to the youth through referrals from teachers. A lot of times parents are not supportive of their youth, so we still want to support those youth. So we are here to offer services however we need to, if that's via phone or text or email, or when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, in person.
Well, since we are in the middle of a pandemic, are there any virtual options?
There are. We're and all those are listed on our website. We are offering all kinds of virtual classes, peer sessions, fun stuff, reading a book club, a photography club, and then serious things. Classes about relationships, healthy relationships with your parents. We help youth work through those issues that they might be experiencing because they are stuck in a house with parents who might not be supportive.
Are these resources, and is help free? The kids that don't live in a supportive household might feel really uncomfortable asking their parents to schedule a therapy session or, to drive them to a session. Is help free, and is it easily accessible for all?
All of the services at IYG are free to participants. And then we have connections to mental health professionals who offer services on a sliding scale or take different insurances if parents do have health insurance. So we can always work to find the support that the youth needs depending on their circumstances.
Excellent. Is there anything else you'd like to add about Indiana Youth Group or suicide prevention in the LGBTQ community or the youth community?
I think it's just really important that as adults, we offer support to youth. Just being a friendly voice, it might be the only friendly voice they hear that day. just being kind to LGBTQ youth, all youth, but specifically LGBTQ youth, can really help drive down rates of suicide. And it's something that doesn't cost us anything, just a little bit of time, and it can literally save lives.
And if there's a parent or a guardian listening who wants to learn more about the LGBTQ community to better understand their child, how can they do that?
Again, reach out to IYG. We offer parent classes. We help walk parents through the process of their child coming out, whether that's sexual orientation or gender identity. We'll walk with them because we know a lot of times the youth have been thinking about this for years. Some youth think about this for 10 or 12 years before they come out to their families. And we want to be able to support the families to catch up to where the youth is. And we work with the youth to explain to them that they need to give their family some time. It's, if you've been thinking about it for 10 years, mom and dad aren't going to get it on day one. But we work with those families to family reunification if it's possible and safe.
Excellent. Thank you so much for your time, Chris. We really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
You are so welcome, Chris. Hey, we're going to switch gears here and talk to my good friend, Dr. Kelsea Visalli. She is a psychologist, and we're going to talk about debunking therapy myths. Hey, Kelsea, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Jules. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm really glad that we're getting to stop the music and really have a serious discussion about mental health and suicide prevention. It is World Suicide Prevention Day, September Suicide Prevention Month. And let's talk about debunking therapy myths, because a lot of us, don't seek out therapy because of what we see on TV and in the movies. There's always a couch and you're laying down talking about your feelings. Is that really what going to therapy is like?
So it's so interesting. The media definitely glamorizes and has a very specific type of therapy they tend to portray. So yes, there may be a couch and a chair that you can sit on, but for the most part, every therapist has a different style. And what you're referring to is like Freudian psychoanalytic therapy, which is a very specific type of therapy that you can still seek out. But most people, if they just go looking for a general therapist, aren't going to do. Yes, you will talk about your feelings, but that's because usually some sort of feeling brings you into therapy. And it doesn't have to be so how do you feel about that question? There's many other ways to get into how someone's feeling.
So what are some common reasons that you think people don't come to therapy? Do you think that, what they see on TV has something to do with it?
Yeah, I think what they see on TV might send the message that you have to be very, very ill in order to even go to therapy. I also think that maybe they've heard about someone who had a bad experience, or maybe they didn't have the best experience. Maybe when they were a teenager, they were forced to go. Who wants to do that? And so then later on, they're like, well, that's not for me. That was a bad experience. I also think some people believe that they're just supposed to be able to do it on their own and power through. And their family sends that message. And so why would they go? They feel like they shouldn't have to.
Yeah, there's definitely a stigma behind going to therapy. So what would you say to somebody that's not sure if they should go because they think it's just for weak people?
Yes. So one of the things I like to tell people is that everybody needs support. We're social creatures. We're not meant to do life in isolation. Life is really hard, especially during current times with pandemics and stressors. And so even just the act of talking to somebody can alleviate symptoms of depression very, very quickly. It's kind of crazy how quickly it can work. And I also wanted to mention that it's all about how we define strength and weakness. So to me, vulnerability takes a lot of guts. Weakness is kind of more the myth that people think to share their feelings with somebody else.
Yeah, it definitely takes a lot to, admit like, all right, I'm not feeling at my best mentally. I need to get help. And so another myth that we've heard is that you have to be really mentally ill to get therapy, but therapy is for everyone, right?
Gosh, yes. Even therapists have therapists, and they encourage it when we're in grad school during our training. But if you think about it, there's so many different life adjustments that we have to go through. Think about getting married, graduations, new jobs, pandemics, babies, and every different adjustment can bring on stressors that we don't know how to handle because we've never done it before. So for that reason, you don't have to have this diagnosable serious reason to go to therapy, But if you do have something that's more common, like depression or anxiety or any other mental health disorder, it's a great avenue for you regardless of the severity. Does that make sense? Like there's no reason to not go.
Totally. And some people might have had like a really bad experience. They went one time, like a few years ago. They're like, I'm never going back again. But what would you say to somebody that thinks all therapists are the same and all therapy sessions are the same?
So I think if you don't know what therapy is like, you might just assume it's kind of this big umbrella of, oh, you talk about your feelings and that's it. But the first thing I like to mention is you need to find a match for you. So not everybody in the world is going to be a good therapist for me, and I'm not going to be a good therapist for them. And it's not because I don't have the skills. It's just because different personalities and focus areas can match people differently. So a lot of therapists offer free consults where you can call. You can call for a one-time consult and you can get vibes from them. You can see what their style is. You can see, like, do you get kind of like comforting vibes? Do they understand you? And I also recommend reading their bios online. Everybody nowadays has some sort of online blurb about what their kind of focus point is and what their specialties are. And you can learn a lot about potential therapists just by browsing through online and looking at pictures.
So you would kind of say that in a sense, we can shop for our own therapist.
Yeah, definitely. So it's such an interesting concept, right? But think about how you look up a medical doctor. You might look up some reviews. You might go where a family member tells you to go. A lot of people go where your insurance is accepted. And it's kind of a similar process for therapy. You want to look through what their focus area is, if a family member maybe vibed with them well. And then you want to kind of see, are they offering what you need? So if somebody specializes in OCD treatment and you really want to talk about relationships, maybe they're not the best fit, but maybe there's someone else who has a specialty in a variety of different areas. And another thing I'd like to mention is we refer. So sometimes people come in and it's not that they necessarily dislike me, but maybe they're not making the progress they want with me. I'm happy to refer them to somebody who specializes in an area that might help them even more with their presenting issue.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really feel like the shopping around for a therapist was a thing people did, and even therapists recommending other therapists. That's so cool.
And I want to add too that it's always helpful to give it a couple tries. So definitely tell your therapist if they're not offering something you need, because we can't really adjust and meet your needs if we don't know what we're missing in the first place.
Right. So what would you say to somebody who thinks therapy won't work for them?
Definitely. So have they tried it before is generally the first question. And if they have, there's probably a variety of different reasons why maybe they didn't like it. And that's totally valid. But what I say is that we know therapy is empirically validated, and we know the therapeutic relationship accounts for so much change in how somebody's doing. We also want to look at options like maybe they need medication as an adjunct to therapy. Maybe they just need to figure out ways to get more active in the community. So I tell people it's okay to be ambivalent, and it's okay to not be sure about therapy, but still kind of giving it a try and being open with your provider about, hey, I'm kind of nervous about this. I don't think it's going to work. I can work with that a lot easier than somebody who comes in and doesn't share that with me.
So a lot of people, think that therapy is too expensive, especially in this pandemic. We're all a little strapped for cash. How expensive is therapy?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and it can kind of range. But one thing I wanted to definitely mention is there are a lot of options people might not know about. So a lot of therapists accept insurances, and a lot of websites are set up so you can enter your insurance. Right now with the pandemic, a lot of copays are being waived. So basically, if you call your insurance and say, hey, COVID's stressing me out, I need some therapy, you might not have to pay a dime out of your pocket. Insurance would just cover it. There's also, I always tell people when they're going to meet with a therapist to talk about pricing, do it right away. Don't do a bunch of sessions and then talk about it, but that shouldn't happen. That's not ethical. But ask them if they do what's called a sliding scale. And with a sliding scale, you can kind of compromise and meet where your salary is and kind of lower the price if the therapist is open to doing so.
That's a really interesting concept. I've never heard of the medical field having a sliding scale for payments. That's so interesting. So is there a time length for therapy? Some people might go to one session and think they're supposed to be fixed of all their problems. And then some people might go once and think that they have to keep going for the rest of their life. Is there some type of time scale for this?
Yeah, and it differs so much between person, but you have so much say in that. Therapy is definitely a collaborative process. So you should never be kind of feeling like you're forced or obligated to keep going back unless you're court ordered, but that's like a very rare kind of different thing. But we'd say the sweet spot can range. Generally, it's more than one time. So if you go in frustrated that things aren't better after one time, that's because we're kind of growing and developing a relationship with you. And in the intake, we're mostly getting to know you. A lot of people start to see progress after 3 to 5 sessions, though. So that's really quick. Wow. And a lot of people feel relief just after one because they finally got it off their chest and they're not having to hold it kind of in so much and feel that burden on their shoulders.
So if we're considering going to therapy, we're not sure how to really start and go about it, what would you tell somebody seeking therapy?
Definitely. So I found some tools and resources that I thought could be really helpful. So I mention this a lot, but once again, Psychology Today is so amazing because right now it's telling you everybody who is doing online therapy. So don't think just because of the pandemic you can't get support. We adjust, we adapt, and there's a lot of confidential platforms for therapists to do therapy online with you. So Talkspace has this really helpful article. It's called What I Wish I Knew About Therapy. I'll link it in my Instagram. It's a really good way to go through. It debunks a few more myths about therapy from a person who actually was hesitant and then finally went to therapy. There's also an article from Psychology Today called How to Find a Therapist for You. And I'll just summarize it super fast. There's kind of 7 main tips. So asking around for people that have seen therapists, checking out online, looking at pictures, kind of seeing what does their space look like? What's their vibe like? You can pick if there's a gender preference, their approach to therapy. Generally, their bio should say their approach. And then also you can call and consult and notice how you feel during that consultation. Does it feel like it could be a good fit?
That's very good information. Thank you so much, Dr. Kelsea Visalli, helping us debunk therapy myths. So how can we connect with you?
Yeah, so you can go to my Instagram. It's at dr.Kelsea Visalli. And then my YouTube, where I do some self-care and kind of vlog things, are also linked to my Instagram at the same name.
Again, thank you, Dr. Kelsea Visalli, for joining us today, helping us debunk therapy myths. I always learn a lot from you. Kelsea actually joins me on Facebook Live on Fridays for a coping with quarantine session where we talk all things mental health. You can check out those past sessions at radionowindy.com, along with all the other resources we're talking about today. Those are at radionowindy.com. When you click on the news and features tab on the homepage, the drop-down menu, you'll see a mental health and wellness tab. Click on that. You can find all of our past coping with quarantine sessions there. And we're going to take a quick break, but we're going to be back talking with Julie Hayden of NAMI to continue this discussion on suicide prevention on World Suicide Prevention Day.